The ultimatum. Overlord Fenris stood on the command deck of his dreadnought, his malevolent black eyes fixed on the blue-green orb slowly revolving on the view screen. The primitive world called Earth, soon to be the latest conquest of the Raymond Star Empire. Around him, a task force of mighty warships hung in space, enough firepower to reduce the planet's surface to molten slag. Fenris allowed himself a small smile. This would be too easy. The hairless apes had barely achieved interstellar flight. They were centuries behind the Raymond technologically. His battle fleet could take their home world in a matter of hours. Fenris activated the ship-to-surface communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. He wanted every human to hear this. People of Earth, I am Overlord Fenris of the Raymond Star Empire. Your planet now falls under our dominion. You will commit to our rule effective immediately. Resist, and you will be destroyed. There was a long silence. Fenris drummed his fingers on the console impatiently. Then a gruff human voice crackled over the comm. This is General Donald Williams of the Terran Defense Forces. On behalf of all free peoples of Earth, I have one message for you. Overlord, go to hell. Fenris snarled. The nerve of these primates. You dare defy the Empire? We will grind your cities to dust, massacre your people. Earth will be your Empire's graveyard. Williams cut in. See, we've been preparing for this day. You aliens aren't nearly as clever as you think. We've watched you, study your tech. Now it's ours, and it's pointed right at you. Proximity alerts flashed red across the command deck. Fenris gaped at the readouts in disbelief. Dozens, no, hundreds of defense platforms and ships were decloaking all around his fleet, bristling with weapons and locking onto his ships. Last chance, Fenris, Williams growled. Withdraw now, and we won't pursue. Push this any further, and you'll see how primitive we really are. Fenris raged at the screen. Enough. All ships. Commence bombardment. Wipe these savages out. As the Raymond fleet opened fire, space lit up with the blinding flash of human missiles erupting from their silos. The opening salvos hammered Fenris warships, overwhelming their shields and tearing through hulls. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks on the bridge around him as the dreadnought shuddered under the impacts. Visuals showed Raymond vessels coming apart, bodies spilling into the void. Fenris stared in mute horror as an armada of human craft surged forward, blasting through his crumbling lines, elite space marine boarding teams in tow. This couldn't be happening, not to the Raymond Star Empire. Overlord, we must withdraw. The dreadnought's captain pleaded. We've lost a third of the task force already. Fenris nodded numbly, his arrogance shattered. He punched the emergency jump to hyperspace, fleeing before the vengeful humans could tear his ship apart. Set course for Remus, maximum speed. General Williams' voice boomed over the comm one last time, chasing them as they fled. You wanted to teach humanity to kneel, Fenris, but we don't kneel. We don't submit, and we protect what's ours. You should have left us alone. Now your empire will burn. Earth is coming for you. The counterattack. In the aftermath of the Raymond rout at Earth, General Donald Williams convened an emergency war council aboard the Retribution, the flagship of the rapidly expanding Terran Defense Fleet. The assembled admirals and generals pored over polo maps of Raymond space, debating strategies. We have them on the run, Admiral Ivanova said, her eyes gleaming. Now's our chance to hit them hard, keep them reeling. Donald nodded. Agreed. We press the attack. Strike at their critical infrastructure, shipyards, supply depots, command centers. We cripple their ability to make war. The council quickly drew up a list of priority targets with a heavily fortified Raymond shipyard at the top. Reconnaissance showed a steady stream of warships, troop transports, and invasion craft pouring out of its construction base. That shipyard is a dagger pointed at the heart of every free world, Donald said. We take it out, we buy ourselves some breathing room. The Retribution led the assault, a wolf pack of stealth frigates and destroyer escorts in tow. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Engines powered down, heat sinks engaged. The human ships drifted closer, running silent, undetected by the Raymond sensor nets. Once in range, they sprang the trap. All ships, commence attack. Donald barked. The Retribution's forward batteries erupted, sending a salvo of antimatter torpedoes and kinetic harpoons streaking towards the shipyard. The human weapons punched through the station's shields like they were made of paper, tearing gaping holes in its armored hull. Secondary explosions blossomed across the shipyard as the torpedoes detonated inside, setting off ammunition stores and reactor cores. Debris tumbled away into the void. "First wave, on me," Donald ordered over the comm. "We're going in. Time to introduce the Raymonds to the Terran Space Marines." The general led the boarding parties himself, blasting his way into the ruined shipyard at the head of an elite squad. They stormed through smoke-filled corridors, cutting down Raymond defenders with concentrated pulse rifle fire. In the station's command center, Donald's team engaged the enemy troops in brutal close combat. The general smashed a Raymond trooper's faceplate with the butt of his rifle, then took down 2 more with well-placed shots. After a vicious firefight, the command center was secured. Donald's hackers quickly got to work on the Raymond systems, extracting fleet movements, supply schedules, any intel they could grab. "Sir, I've got something," one of the hackers reported. "Looks like a major Raymond counteroffensive in the works. Massive fleet buildup at these coordinates." Donald frowned at the data. "They're going to have to move fast to head this off. All teams, pull back to the assault shuttles," he ordered over the comm. "We've got what we came for. Let's get scarce before their backup arrives." As the Space Marines exfiltrated the burning shipyard, Donald set the charges on the station's reactor cores and initiated a reactor overload. They destroyed the shipyard, dealing a heavy blow to the Raymond war machine. The general grinned as the Retribution and its battle group blinked out, jumping to their next target. 1 down, many more to go. Liberation of Taurus Prime. Emboldened by the success of the shipyard assault and other surgical strikes on Raymond outposts, the Terran Federation went on the offensive, launching a campaign to liberate the human colonies languishing under alien occupation. Donald's fleet arrived in orbit of Taurus Prime, a mining world that's been under the Raymond boot for decades. The human resistance fighters there had sent out a desperate plea for aid, and the Terran forces aimed to answer the call. The general coordinated with the locals, smuggling in heavy weapons and equipment. When the time was right, they launched a planet-wide uprising. The human forces hit the Raymond garrison bases and weapons depots in a series of lightning raids, securing a foothold on the planet. Colonial militias, armed with Terran-supplied pulse rifles and power armor, swept through the mines and labor camps, freeing the enslaved workers. The Raymonds struggled to react, their forces caught off guard by the ferocity and coordination of the human assault. In the chaos, Donald led a daring strike on the governor's palace, a fortified compound jam-packed with anti-air batteries and armored troops. The general fought his way inside at the head of an elite Space Marine kill team. They cornered the regional governor, a vicious tyrant reviled for his cruelty, in his command bunker. After a close-quarters firefight, Donald kicked down the door to the governor's sanctum and ordered him to stand down. The Raymond warlord snarled in fury, drawing a disruptor pistol, but Donald was faster. The general put 2 pulse rounds through the governor's chest, then watched coldly as the alien crumpled to the floor. "Taurus Prime is free," Donald declared over the open comm channel. "All Raymond forces are to stand down and surrender immediately. This world belongs to humanity once more." With the liberation of Taurus Prime, word spread quickly of the Terrans' victories and the shattering of the Raymond armies. Across the galaxy, long-subjugated species took heart, rising up against their oppressors. A ragtag coalition of free worlds began to form, with the Terran fleets at its forefront. The last stand. But even as the Raymond Empire crumbled, its remaining warlords prepared for a vicious counterattack. They would not let their slave worlds slip away so easily, As the Terran ships pushed into the heart of Raymond space, Donald knew that the defining battle of the war was yet to come. Reports flooded in of a massive enemy fleet massing at a key Raymond stronghold. The warlords were gathering every ship they had left for a last stand. It would be a fight to the death, with the hope of the universe in the balance. Donald gripped the arms of his command chair aboard the Retribution, his face set in iron purpose. One way or another, this will be the battle that decides it all. Humanity's freedom or eternal slavery to the Raymond yoke. Set course for the enemy staging area, he ordered, his voice ringing out across the bridge. It's time we finish this, once and for all. The victory celebrations across the Terran Federation came to an abrupt halt as alarms blared throughout the fleet. Donald stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his face grim as reports flooded in from across human space. "Sir, we're getting distress calls from New Eden, Proxima Centauri, and half a dozen other colonies," his communications officer reported, voice tight with tension. "It's the Raymonds. They're hitting us everywhere at once." Donald's fists clenched as he watched the tactical display. A vast swarm of red icons swept across human territory, striking with brutal efficiency. How had they amassed such a force without detection? "All ships, battle stations," Donald barked. "We're going to meet this head-on." The Retribution surged forward, leading the Terran fleet into the fray. As they dropped out of warp near the embattled colony of New Eden, Donald's blood ran cold. The orbital defenses lay in ruins, and Raymond warships swarmed like locusts around the planet. "Open fire," Donald commanded. The Retribution's main guns blazed to life, lancing out at the nearest Raymond cruiser. But as the beams struck home, they splashed harmlessly off some kind of new shielding technology. "What the hell?" Donald muttered. Before he could process this development, a swarm of fighters poured out of the Raymond vessels. But these were unlike any fighters they'd faced before. They moved with inhuman speed and precision, shrugging off hits that should have vaporized them. "Sir, we're detecting unusual biosigns from those fighters," his science officer reported. I think they're piloted by some kind of genetically engineered super soldiers." The battle devolved into chaos. For every Raymond ship they managed to down, 2 human vessels were torn apart. Donald watched in horror as good men and women he'd fought alongside for years were cut down in seconds. "We need to take out their command and control," Donald growled. "Prep a stealth shuttle. I'm leading a strike team to board their flagship." His XO protested, but Donald shut him down with a look. This was the only way. Minutes later, Donald led a small team of his best operatives onto the Raymond command ship. They fought their way through twisting corridors, losing men with each firefight. By the time they reached the bridge, only Donald and 2 others remained standing. They burst onto the command deck in a hail of gunfire. Donald's eyes locked onto a tall, imposing figure at the center, Admiral Orcs himself. The Raymond mastermind turned, a cruel smile on his alien features. "Ah, the famous General Williams," Zork sneered. "I was hoping you'd make it." Donald raised his weapon. "It's over, Zorks. Surrender now." The Raymond Admiral laughed. "Oh no, human. It's only just beginning." In that moment, Donald's blood ran cold as Zorks revealed the true nature of their attack. Earth itself was the real target, left vulnerable by the Terran fleet's absence. Even now, a cloaked Raymond armada led by Fenris himself was en route to humanity's homeworld. "No," Donald whispered, realizing the full scope of their mistake. With a savage growl, he lunged at Zorks. The 2 leaders grappled brutally, but Donald's fury gave him the edge. He slammed the Raymond Admiral to the ground, weapon pressed to his head. "Call them off," Donald snarled. "Now." But Zorks only laughed. "You're too late, human. Earth will burn, and your species will kneel at last." Donald's calm crackled to life, confirming his worst fears. The Raymond Doomsday Fleet had reached Earth. They were out of time. The final battle. The tide of war shifted in humanity's favor. Years passed as the Terran Federation expanded its reach across the stars, forging alliances and advancing its technology. Admiral Donald Williams stood on the bridge of the TFS Retribution, surveying holographic star charts, his weathered face reflecting years of hard-fought battles. "Sir, we've pinpointed the Raymond stronghold on Quadine," his XO reported. "Warlord Thraxus has amassed a significant force there." Donald's eyes narrowed. "Then it's time we finish this. All ships, prepare for jump to Quadine." The Terran Armada erupted from hyperspace above the harsh world. Donald's voice rang out across the comms. "Commence orbital bombardment. Soften their defenses for our ground forces." Lances of energy rained down on Quadine's surface, shattering Raymond fortifications. Donald led the first wave of dropships, plasma rounds pinging off their hulls as they punched through the atmosphere. His boots hit dirt as he charged out of the landing craft, pulse rifle at the ready. "Push forward. Secure that ridge." Terran Marines swarmed across the blasted landscape, trading fire with entrenched Raymond defenders. Donald dove for cover as a plasma mortar detonated nearby, showering him with debris. He popped up, squeezing off controlled bursts that dropped 2 Raymond soldiers. "Admiral, we've located Thraxus command bunker," a scout reported over the comm. "It's heavily fortified." "Understood. I'll lead a strike team myself," Donald replied. "Have our heaviest units draw their fire under cover of an orbital barrage." Donald and his elite squad infiltrated the Raymond stronghold. They fought room to room, Donald's combat reflexes honed by years of war. They breached the inner sanctum to find Thraxus waiting, energy blade humming. The Raymond warlord towered over Donald, mandibles clicking in anticipation. "Your reign ends here, Thraxus," Donald growled, raising his rifle. Thraxus lunged, blade slashing. Donald rolled aside, squeezing off shots that sparked off the alien's armor. They grappled brutally, Donald using the Raymond's momentum to slam him into a control panel. Sparks flew as they traded blows. Donald's ribs cracked under a powerful strike, but he gritted his teeth and fought on. He caught Thraxus' arm mid-swing, twisting until the energy blade clattered to the floor. A final crushing blow laid the Raymond warlord out. Donald stood over him, chest heaving. "Surrender. It's over." With their leader captured, the remaining Raymond forces on Quadine fractured. After weeks of grueling combat, the planet fell to Terran control. Donald returned to a hero's welcome on Earth, crowds cheering as he stepped off his shuttle. But his victory was tempered by troubling reports crossing his desk. "Another colony gone dark, sir," his aide said gravely. "That's the 3rd this month. No distress call, no signs of attack. They just vanished." Donald frowned, studying the report. "I want our best teams investigating this. Something's not right out there." As Donald dug deeper, a chilling picture emerged. Ancient Raymond records spoke of a deadly alien species, parasitic creatures of nightmare that had nearly wiped out their civilization eons ago. "Xenomorphs," Thraxus hissed from his cell when Donald confronted him. "We fought them extinct. But if they've returned," the Raymond's eyes widened in genuine fear. Reports flooded in of outer colonies overrun. Conventional weapons were useless against the xenomorph swarms. Donald realized humanity faced a threat beyond anything they'd encountered before. In a decision that shocked many, the Terran Federation formed an alliance with their former Raymond foes. Donald found himself working alongside the captured Thraxus, whose knowledge of the ancient enemy proved invaluable. Following clues in Raymond star charts, they discovered the xenomorph homeworld, a nightmarish hive planet on the galaxy's edge. Donald assembled a mighty strike force, human and Raymond ships united against the greater threat. As they dropped out of hyperspace, Donald's teeth clenched at the sight of the xenomorph hive fleet. "All ships, battle stations. For the future of all our peoples, attack." The space above the alien world erupted in furious combat. Terran and Raymond vessels unleashed devastating broadsides against writhing organic high ships. On the planet's surface, Donald led the ground assault alongside Thraxus, fighting through waves of shrieking xenomorphs. "We have to reach the Queen," Donald shouted over the din of battle. "It's our only chance to end this." Side by side, the human admiral and Raymond warlord pushed deeper into the twisting hive tunnels, towards a final confrontation that would decide the future of the stars. The Xenomorph Queen. The Salvation shuddered as another volley of incendiary ordnance erupted from its launch tubes. Donald gripped the command console, watching holographic displays of the planet's surface light up with fiery explosions. Beside him, Thraxus clicked his mandibles in anticipation. "The biomatter defenses are weakening," the Raymond warlord growled. "But not fast enough." Donald nodded grimly. "All units, push forward. We need to breach those outer layers." His words were cut short as alarms blared throughout the bridge. On the main view screen, a writhing mass of xenomorph warriors poured from newly opened fissures in the planet's crust. "Evasive maneuvers," Donald barked. The Salvation banked hard, narrowly avoiding a collision with the surge of chidness bodies. Thraxus leaned over a tactical display, mandibles working furiously. "There," he hissed, pointing to a pulsing node deep within the hive network. "That's a primary synaptic cluster. If we can sever it." Donald didn't hesitate. Targeting solutions locked. Fire. Lances of energy sliced through the atmosphere, striking the designated point with pinpoint accuracy. The effect was immediate. Vast sections of the hive structure went dark, xenomorphs flailing in sudden disconnection from the greater mind. But the victory was short-lived. As Allied forces pushed into the newly opened breach, streams of virulent acid blood sprayed from wounded aliens. Donald watched in horror as entire squads of Marines vanished in clouds of corrosive mist, their agonized screams cutting off abruptly. "We can't sustain these losses," Donald muttered, fists clenching. Thrax's eyes gleamed with an alien light. "There may be another way." Our ancestors spoke of a weapon. Hours later, Donald found himself deep within the bowels of the planet, surrounded by the crumbling ruins of an ancient Raymond temple. The walls were covered in bizarre glyphs that hurt his eyes to look at directly. "Here," Thraxus said, gesturing to a sealed vault. "The Oblivion virus." As they worked to extract the bioweapon, the ground shook violently. Xenomorph shrieks echoed through the twisting tunnels, growing closer by the second. "We're out of time," Donald growled, hefting the virus canister. "Deploy it. Now." The warhead streaked toward the Queen's chamber, a pinprick of light against the vastness of the hive. For a moment, all was still. Then, hell itself seemed to break loose. Xenomorphs turned on each other in frenzied bloodlust, flesh bubbling and warping grotesquely. The Queen's psychic screams tore through Donald's mind. Donald's fists clenched at his sides. This was the third such incident in as many weeks. He turned to face the assembled War Council, a mix of human and Raymond faces united in steadfast perseverance. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face a threat unlike any we've encountered before," Donald began, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "Our probes have confirmed our worst fears. We're dealing with an entity known as the Void Horde, an ancient malevolent force capable of devouring entire civilizations." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room. A grizzled Raymond general stepped forward, mandibles clicking nervously. "Supreme Commander, surely there must be some mistake. Even at the height of our empire's power, we never encountered such a—" "I'm afraid it's no mistake, General," a gravelly voice interrupted. All eyes turned to see Fenris, the former Raymond warlord, limping into the chamber. "The Void Horde is very real and very dangerous. My people faced them once eons ago. We barely survived." Donald nodded grimly. "Fenris has provided us with crucial intelligence. The Horde uses a network of interconnected wormholes to strike without warning, consuming all resources in their path. Conventional defenses are useless." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, fear and anger mingling in the air. Donald raised a hand for silence. I've already authorized the mobilization of all Guardian forces. We're establishing defensive perimeters around key population centers. But we must face the reality that many outlying worlds may be lost. Hours blurred into days as the Guardian fleet scrambled to meet the Void Horde's relentless advance. Donald stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant, watching helplessly as another colony world fell to the invaders. The planet's surface writhed with cancerous growths, biomechanical structures sprouting like obscene flowers. "Sir, we've got civilians trapped in the Proxima mining outpost," a young lieutenant reported. "Void constructs are swarming the area." Donald's eyes hardened. "Take us in. We'll buy them time to evacuate." The Defiant plunged through a storm of plasma fire, void-spawned monstrosities clawing at its hull. Donald coordinated the desperate defense, Guardian dropships racing to extract terrified colonists as nightmarish beasts tore through the outpost's defenses. As the last transport lifted off, Donald caught sight of a familiar face through the view screen. Thraxus, his old friend and comrade, leading a squad of Raymond warriors in a fierce rear-guard action. "Thraxus," Donald shouted into the comm. "Fall back now. We can't hold them any longer." The Raymond warlord turned, mandibles spread in a grim smile. "Go, my friend. We'll cover your retreat." Before Donald could protest, a massive void construct burst from the ground, tentacles rising. Thraxus and his warriors vanished in a surge of chitinous bodies and crackling energy. "No," Donald roared, smacking his fist against the console. But there was no time for grief. The Void Horde pressed on, and countless more lives hung in the balance. Days later, Donald found himself in the heart of the maelstrom. The Guardian Armada engaged the Horde in the Typhon Rift system, buying precious time for civilian evacuation fleets to escape. The space around them churned with nightmarish void vessels, organic forms melded with impossible geometries. Multiple hull breaches. A panicked voice cried out, "They're boarding us." Donald watched in horror as writhing tendrils of void matter punched through bulkheads, Guardian crew transforming into shrieking mutated abominations before his eyes. His hand hovered over the emergency controls, a sickening feeling of déjà vu washing over him. "Forgive me," he whispered, activating the Oblivion virus countermeasure. A wave of sickly green energy pulsed through the infected ships, purging them of all life, both void spawn and Guardian alike. As Typhon's orbital facility crumbled and its moons cracked like eggshells, Donald made a fateful decision. He plotted a course for the heart of the churning wormhole at the system's center, the source of the Horde's invasion. "All hands, brace for transit," he ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "We're going in." The Defiant plunged into the roiling vortex, reality itself seeming to twist and shatter around them. When they emerged, Donald found himself in a realm beyond nightmares, a cosmic null space of raw, hungry entropy. And there, at the heart of the madness, he saw a sight that chilled him to his core. Thraxus, his old friend, suspended in a web of pulsing biocircuitry. The Raymond's body was flayed open, his consciousness serving as a conduit for the Horde's malevolent will. Donald steeled himself for what he knew must be done. He would save his friend, or what remained of him, and in doing so, perhaps save them all. Donald Williams stood on the bridge of the Retribution, his face etched with lines of exhaustion as he surveyed the remnants of his battered fleet. The void around them churned with debris from the titanic battle they had just survived. "Status report," he barked, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders. Lieutenant Chen, her uniform singed and torn, looked up from her console. "Sir, we've lost 30% of our ships. The rest are reporting critical damage. Life support systems are failing on multiple vessels." Donald nodded grimly. "Begin immediate evacuation of the most damaged ships. We can't afford to lose any more lives today." As rescue shuttles darted between the wounded vessels, Donald's mind raced. The victory over Thraxus had come at a terrible cost. He thought of Fenris, The old Raymond warlord who had sacrificed himself to ensure their success. The irony wasn't lost on him. Their greatest enemy had become their savior in the end. "Sir," Chen interrupted his thoughts. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's the Terran Federation Council." Donald steeled himself. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern faces of the council members. Councillor Jameson, a hawk-nosed man with steel-gray hair, spoke first. "Commander Williams, we received your preliminary report. While we commend your success in neutralizing the Raymond threat, we have concerns about the methods employed." Donald's jaw clenched. "With all due respect, Counselor, we did what was necessary to prevent a full-scale war." "By allying with Fenris," another counselor interjected, "a known war criminal." "Fenris gave his life to save us all," Donald countered, his voice rising. "Without him, we'd be looking at an all-out conflict between humans and Raymonds right now." The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Jameson cleared his throat. "Be that as it may, Commander, this incident has inflamed tensions among our more conservative factions. There are those calling for a stronger military response against the remaining Raymond holdouts." Donald hit his fist on the console, causing several crew members to jump. "Damn it, that's exactly what we're trying to prevent. Can't you see that more violence will only breed more hatred?" "Watch your tone, Commander," Jameson warned. "Remember who you're speaking to." Donald took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. "My apologies, counselors, but I implore you to see reason. We have a chance here to build something greater than our individual species. The Guardians represent hope for a united future." There was a long pause as the counselors conferred among themselves. Finally, Jameson spoke again. "We understand your position, Commander. For now, you're to continue your diplomatic efforts. But be aware that we'll be watching closely. Any further unorthodox alliances will be met with severe consequences." The transmission cut off, leaving Donald staring at empty space. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Chen looking at him with concern. "What now, sir?" she asked quietly. Donald squared his shoulders, his eyes scanning the bridge crew. He saw fear in their faces, but also perseverance. They'd been through hell together, and they were still standing. "Now," he said, his voice firm, "we get to work. Set a course for the Epsilon colony. We've got a lot of rebuilding to do." As the Retribution limped through the stars, Donald retreated to his quarters. He pulled out a worn datapad, its screen flickering to life with a map of known space. Red markers indicated areas of conflict, yellow showed unstable regions, and green represented zones of relative peace. There was far too much red and yellow for his liking. Donald began to plan. He'd need to reach out to the more reasonable Raymond factions to show them that cooperation was possible. He'd have to find a way to honor Fenris' sacrifice without alienating human hardliners. And all the while, he'd have to keep his fleet ready for the next crisis. Because Donald Williams knew, deep in his bones, that the galaxy wasn't done testing them yet. The real work was just beginning. The Retribution limped through the void, its hull scarred and blackened from the brutal battle against Thrax's forces. Donald Williams stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the display as Earth grew larger, a blue marble suspended in the endless black. "Commodore Chen, status report," he said, his voice weary but firm. Chen looked up from her console, dark circles under her eyes. "Sir, we've got multiple ships operating on emergency power. Life support is critical on the Dauntless and the Raymond cruiser Thero. Medical bays are overflowing on all vessels." Donald nodded grimly. "Begin immediate transfer of wounded to Earth's orbital stations. I want damage assessments from every ship captain within the hour." As the battered Guardian Armada approached Earth, Donald couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were far from over. The victory against Thraxus had come at a terrible cost, and he knew that both humanity and the Raymonds would be looking for someone to blame. His fears were confirmed the moment they entered Earth's orbit. A barrage of transmissions flooded the comms, each more urgent than the last. "Sir," Chen called out, We're receiving priority messages from both the Terran Federation Council and the Raymond High Command. Donald braced himself. Put them through, split screen. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern faces of human and Raymond leaders. Before Donald could speak, a human counselor, his face flushed with anger, burst out. Commander Williams, your actions in the Thraxis campaign were reckless and heavy-handed. You've brought us to the brink of all-out war. A Raymond general, mandibles clicking in agitation, added, the use of banned weaponry against our people cannot go unanswered. We demand reparations and the immediate disarmament of human forces in contested sectors. Donald raised his hands, trying to calm the storm of accusations. Counselors, generals, please. We faced an existential threat. Fenris, sacrifice. Fenris was a war criminal, the human counselor spat. Your alliance with him has only emboldened Raymond extremists. The debate raged on, with both sides calling for increasingly harsh measures against the other. Donald felt the fragile peace they'd fought so hard for slipping away. In that moment of crisis, an idea formed in Donald's mind. A risky move, but one that might save everything they'd built. Enough, he shouted, silencing the bickering leaders. I have a proposal. Our long-range scouts have detected an anomaly in the Perius Rift. We believe it may be the fabled Dyson Forge, a source of unimaginable technological power left behind by the precursors. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on Donald. I propose a joint expedition, he continued. Human and Raymond forces working together to unlock the secrets of the Forge. With that kind of power, we could ensure lasting peace for all our peoples. Murmurs of interest rippled through both sides of the screen. After hours of tense negotiation, the mission was approved. Weeks later, Donald stood on the bridge of the newly christened Vengeance, the most advanced ship in the Guardian fleet. Around him, a motley assortment of human and Raymond vessels prepared for the perilous journey into uncharted space. All ships report ready, sir, Chen announced. Donald took a deep breath. Engage slipstream drives. Let's make history. The journey pushed their modified drives to the breaking point. Crew members worked around the clock, patching systems and recalibrating engines as they plunged deep into the unknown. After months of grueling travel, they finally emerged at the edge of a vast, swirling nebula. Its chaotic energies played havoc with their sensors, but at its heart, they detected something impossible. A star completely encased in an artificial shell. By the gods, a Raymond officer breathed. It's real. Donald leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. Take us in, Helm. Nice and easy. As the Vengeance entered the nebula, alarms blared across the bridge. The view screen erupted in a dazzling display of light as tendrils of energy lashed out from the Dyson sphere. Evasive maneuvers, Donald shouted. But it was too late. The energy beam struck the Vengeance, latching onto its hull. Donald watched in horror as sections of the ship began to transform, turning into strange crystalline structures. It's trying to assimilate us, Chen cried over the chaos. Donald's mind raced. He remembered an experimental cyber warfare package they'd brought along, untested and potentially dangerous. Chen, get me direct access to the ship's core systems, he ordered. I'm going to upload a virus directly into whatever's attacking us. Donald jacked into the ship's mainframe, his consciousness merging with the digital realm. He found himself face to face with an alien presence of staggering complexity. Acting on instinct, he unleashed the virus, watching as it tore through the invading code. The attack ceased as suddenly as it had begun. Donald opened his eyes to find the bridge crew staring at him in awe. Sir, Chen said, her voice filled with wonder, you've done it. The nebula's defenses, they're down. As the Guardian fleet pushed deeper into the system, the true nature of the Dyson Forge revealed itself. It wasn't just a shell around a star. It was a colossal factory, a cosmic engine of creation beyond anything they'd imagined. But before they could begin to unravel its secrets, a new threat emerged. Ancient defense systems roared to life. unleashing swarms of self-repairing hunter-killer drones. All ships, evasive action, Donald ordered. We need to reach the central control nexus. He assembled an elite strike team, the best of both human and Raymond forces. They fought their way through twisting corridors of impossible geometry, facing wave after wave of alien guardians. At last, they reached the heart of the forge. Donald stood before a pulsing column of energy, the central synaptic codex of the entire system. "This is it," he said, turning to his team. "Whatever happens next, it's been an honor serving with you all." With that, Donald plunged his hand into the energy field, feeling his consciousness expand beyond the limits of his physical form. In an instant, he witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, each one seeking to harness the forge's power for their own ends. He saw the terrible price of that power. Entire galaxies snuffed out in an instant, reality itself twisting under the weight of godlike ambitions, and he understood that no single being could ever hope to control such a force. But Donald Williams was not just any being. He was a guardian, sworn to protect all life, whatever it takes. And in that moment of cosmic revelation, he made a choice. Instead of allowing the forge to override his mind, Donald pushed back. He poured every ounce of his being, his sense of duty, his commitment to peace, his unwavering belief in the potential for good in all sentient life, into the forge's base code. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. And then something new was born. The Dyson Forge came to life, but not as a weapon or a tool of domination. It began to create, to heal, to restore. Broken worlds were made whole, dying stars flared back to life, and through it all, Donald felt a sense of purpose and righteousness that transcended his mortal form. He had done it. He had given the galaxy a chance at true, lasting peace. As his consciousness slowly returned to his body, Donald knew that the real work was just beginning. But for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel something he'd almost forgotten: hope.